Fatalities among Hispanic construction workers rose over 100% from 2011 to 2022.
So when they see the cost of an injury, the cost of a fatality, that multilingual teams have 3 times more injuries than monolingual teams. When they see some of the companies we've worked with and the way their whole culture shifts and the knowledge that it unlocks because you're finally able to speak in both directions.
95% of the industry who's not in it has no clue what's involved in the permitting and the concrete and the rebar and the blood, sweat, and tears and other bodily fluids that go into building. And we're not just slapping together steel and concrete. We're shaping the future of the world. If somebody was here listening to this and they were kind of sitting on the fence, what's something they need to hear to really ground this? Hello and welcome back to the human side of construction, where we provide construction leaders the insights they need to improve the industry and the great people in it. Today I'm sitting down with Monique Lewis, founder and CEO of Next to Native, where she's made it her mission to close the language gap in our industry. Because on a job site where more than a third of the workforce speaks Spanish, communication isn't a soft skill, it's a safety system. The defining moment for her company came when a language barrier was a contributing factor in a worker's death on a Charlotte job site. Together, we're going to get into the importance of communication, language as PPE, as she puts it, and what it actually takes to make every single person on your crew able to understand the hazard in front of them. Monique, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Excited to be here.
So I always like to kind of start at the beginning. So tell us a little bit about, what you're doing and how you got into working with the construction industry.
I will tell you that it was a surprise to me to get into the construction industry, if I'm being fully honest. It's not something that I saw. Language hit me more than 20 years ago, where I learned my second language. I speak Spanish fluently. And as I was working for a college, working in language, circumstances led me to have a conversation that I also didn't see coming. It was with then education coordinator Caroline Brigman at the CAGC. And she shared with me there was a fatality at a construction company in Charlotte, and it was due in large part to the language barrier. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't just something that hit me like a ton of bricks. It was something that restructured my entire company. At that point, I had been in business for about around 6 months or so, and I was in the B2C space. That changed it in an instant. In that conversation, I learned that language and life, there was an inextricable link there. Because really what I do, my specialty in language, could be used in a lot of different places. But when she shared that story with me, I was like, yeah, I need to be in construction. So my experience, if you will, that was the origin point.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very interesting. And I always say it's kind of cliche, but, construction didn't choose people. Or a lot of times people don't choose construction chooses them.
That's
And it's
exactly
funny
it.
how these things happen in life. You've probably
Yeah.
heard my story, but I didn't plan on getting into the industry. I took engineering in school because my parents' immigrant family, they told me to work from the neck up. And so I went and got an education and graduated, couldn't find a job in engineering. And that's how I
Yeah.
ended up working in construction. So it's funny how things work
Yeah.
out. But I thank God or whatever force kind of put me into this industry because it's very fulfilling and there's so much you can do. So take me back to that moment, like when you got that call and you realized that this was an issue. Like, what did you think about construction before that point versus when you got involved? How did your view on the industry change, or did
I'll
it?
be honest, I had to check myself. Yes, it did change. Because I think that, now this is, a referendum, more global, but stay with me. In the last 20 years or so, we have been encouraging our children to go into white-collar jobs.
Mhm.
Construction historically, in my opinion, or at least in my circles, just, socially, was not looked at as the primary track to be on. I think that's a mistake now. So that's what I mean by I had to check myself. It was looked at as something that was blue collar, was looked at as being less than white collar. Man, was that wrong? Man,
Mhm.
was I wrong? And prior to that conversation, I really hadn't had a reason to kind of challenge that way of thinking. But once I got into it and realized not only the skill, I can't, how many job sites I've walked at this point, how many GCs I've been in front of having these conversations, seeing projects from start to finish. Yeah, the whole thing changed. It was a complete 180 because
Mhm.
now when I'm on a road, I actually made a post about this not long ago because I really, it was shocking. I was riding with my daughter. There's a route that we take every single day, and they were working on it. But there was one particular morning where they'd completely rerouted the thing, and it was seamless.
Mhm.
So Monday we were on it, completely different on Tuesday. And I said to my daughter, these men and women were working while we were sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
That deserves respect.
Mm-hmm.
That deserves so much respect because we rely on it. So as part of, and when I'm speaking at conferences and in front of GCs or in front of ones who don't really understand that language link, I'll remind them every building we walk in, every road that we ride on, it's due to the construction industry. So it needs to be elevated. And I think now with AI coming into the picture, people are having to reevaluate. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that reevaluation already happened for me, but now I'm glad that for whatever reason, the focus is shifting back to it.
Yeah. And that touches on, a couple things I'm really passionate about and why I started doing what I'm doing. Because, really the human side of construction is two things. One is improving the human experience within the industry, first and foremost, because I think, we have a culture problem and part of that is language, which we'll get into a little bit more here. But it's also improving awareness and understanding to the general population. Because like you said, I think in Canada, over 7% of people in Canada are employed in the construction industry. In the States, I think it's a little less. I think it's 4 or 5%. But
Yeah.
regardless, that means that 95% of the industry who's not in it has no clue
None.
what's involved in the design and the permitting and the concrete and the rebar and the blood, sweat, and tears and other bodily fluids that go into building these things. And we're not just slapping together steel and concrete. We're shaping the future of the world.
The
Because
entire infrastructure. Yes,
everything relies on construction. So why
absolutely.
we have a marketing issue or did have a marketing issue, I don't know. But
I
like you
don't
said,
either.
it's really turning around and there's been a lot of positive light, which is good.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the language piece. So when you say, language is life,
Mhm.
when you're talking to a construction person, like a superintendent, or even an owner for that standpoint, like if you're sitting in a boardroom and you start talking about this, what is the look on their face? Like, are they like deer in headlights when it comes to this, or they have some sort of awareness, or what's that conversation look like?
I'm so glad you asked me that because oh, my brain just went in 50 different directions. Stay with me. Oftentimes I'll speak at conferences, and that's often the starting point where I get to be in front of GCs personally. Because prior to that type of exposure to me, my methodology, kind of what I do, there's a certain ignorance there, to be honest with you. Or at the very least, an unawareness of the language barrier as an actual issue.
Mhm.
So oftentimes the way that I will open my keynotes or whatever the case may be, I'll do it in Spanish.
Okay.
And so that was I did the keynote, Safety Day keynote for Weaver Cook, for example. So we have a mix that's probably it was 60% Spanish, 40% English.
Mhm.
So I opened the entire thing in Spanish. And of course, all the English speakers were like, what in the world is going on? I wanted them to feel it viscerally because honestly, most people in the US at least, and you can tell me if it's the same in Canada, most of us are monolingual. We have no concept of other. It's either speak English well or speak it badly, but speak English. So that concept of how it feels when information is being shared with you in another language, and then it ups the ante when life-saving information is being shared with you in another language. So when
Mhm.
I open it up in Spanish, the looks on the faces are like, what in the world is going on? And usually I'll say something that's involving some type of direction, which sounds important in tone, but they have no idea what I'm saying. So after that, I'll say, what are you thinking? And they'll say things like, I'm wondering what you said. Is everything okay? Or,
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. And I'd let them know this is the feeling, that visceral feeling. That's what many of your frontline workers are experiencing during every safety briefing, every toolbox talk, every initiative that we roll out on mental health. They're getting pieces, if any, of it,
Mhm.
of really important information, and they're getting those same feelings of what in the world did he or she say. So I often have to make it visceral so that
Yeah.
it's something that they go, oh, wow, I didn't like how that felt. That
Yeah.
is important.
Like you, my mind's going in a bunch of different directions, and I always have a pad of paper here that I capture a quarter of my thoughts on.
Me too.
But and bear with me because this might sound like not a relevant example, but I remember I was in high school and my mom wanted to learn how to use a computer, and we had desktop computers then, right? This I might be
Yeah.
dating myself.
No, we're
So
same date. Go ahead.
so I say, okay, mom, when you turn the computer on, this is what you see. It's the desktop, and I started explaining, and she was looking at me. I could tell she wanted to ask something, but I was like, I could tell by the look on her face. I said, "Oh, what's going on?" She goes, "How do you turn it on?" And it's like you assume that
Yes,
something that basic people know. And
just no.
especially when you get into, and you raise a very good point, especially when it comes to life-saving measures, health and safety, safe work procedures, safety training, tying off, working heights, all those elements, or even just explaining a technical process like how a building comes to work, how concrete cures, how to review a shop drawing. You are
Absolutely.
making the assumption that that
They're
person
right with you.
understands the words. Forget about, because the technical stuff is up here, but way down here at the foundation, which is the stuff I love, the people to people connection and the communication. You can't make the assumption that that's there. So knowing that, a third in the States, and correct me if I'm wrong on the exact stats, but a third of the US construction workforce is Spanish speaking. In some states, it's more than that. So where's the gap that you see on site? Like, what does that actually look on a job site when you walk or you start working with these companies?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. Please let me make a comment on the numbers, because the numbers are such that they say there's 33.33% of the construction industry across the U.S. that is, what are the words? Foreign-born, Hispanic, Spanish-speaking. That is the kind of
Okay.
the verbiage there. Now, I will say for myself, I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, but our clients are nationwide. But when I'm driving around in my area, I don't see 33.33%.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm talking to clients and prospects, they don't see 33.33% either. That's likely, that is, well, I shouldn't say likely, that is absolutely underreported. So
So there's
the
more.
numbers, say again?
There's more.
Oh, a lot more.
Okay.
There's a lot more. And the further west that you go, Arizona, California, you're looking at 60 to 70% of
Wow.
their frontline workforce is Spanish. Um, Another note that comes to mind is that right now, of course, you and I both, a lot of our content surrounds the shortage. All of us are talking about that because it's in our face and it matters.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these companies, for example, one GC that we're in conversation with right now has received a data center contract. They need to beef up their frontline force quickly. They're contacting talent agencies. Those talent agencies are sending them 40 to 60% Hispanic workers.
Okay.
So that number is rising because we're trying to see who can we get quickly for these projects that need a beefing up of the frontline workers very quickly. So not only is it the current circumstance, it is well over, in most cases, 50%. That number is rising.
Right.
Because we need hands to do the work. And this matter of our return to focus on blue collar work, on the construction industry, it's going to take time for that to catch up. So
100%. 100%. I totally agree on the recruitment side of things. We've done a lot of work. There's been a lot of efforts in the US and in Canada, and it's awesome, but it's too late. It's going to help.
That
So
gap is not
we're
going to
talking,
cover. It's going to cover.
it's great. We're talking to elementary school kids now and letting them know construction is a viable career. Cause I'll be 42 this year. Nobody once in my life, Monique, said that construction was a viable career path. It was something you went into if other things didn't work out.
Didn't work out.
So now we've changed that, and it's very good. But like you said, there's probably, and I would even guess, a 10-year gap, like the next decade. I think the pipeline's full here, but by the time it gets to the point of being useful, it's going to be 5 to 10 years. So on that, and where money's going, where investments are going, like you said, companies don't hesitate to invest heavily in equipment and technology, especially now with AI and all that stuff. But they underinvest in whether people can understand and effectively use any of it. Exactly. So to me, when I have my operational hat on, I'm like, that's got to cost money, right? In wastage and rework and downtime and all that stuff. Walk me through like what kind of costs a leader could expect to see due to this just simple language gap.
Understood. So the first thing they're going to look at, and what we really present them with first, sometimes GCs are looking at cost of language training, which is what we call it, our proprietary software is Site Speak, our program. Sometimes they're looking at that versus zero. Me spending this or not spending this. What we encourage them to do and really giving them a real picture is what happens if you don't do it. Because oftentimes human nature is such that we make a decision based on a negative outcome that we're trying to avoid, as opposed to a positive outcome that we'd like to gain. So we share with them three numbers in particular. One is going to be the cost of an injury, $48,000 average. Then you're looking at, especially for these companies that are getting data center contracts, so maybe they work with medical facilities that they're building, their EMR is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
If it's above 1, it affects their ability to get future work.
Yep.
1 injury can send it above 1. So get them to look at that cost. Then we also get them to look at what is the cost of a fatality. I think the number is minimum, and this again is an average 1.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at them to get a focus on what is the cost to their name when it happens on their site, on their name. What is the cost to their reputation? Now, I can tell you the cost of site speak is less than all of those numbers.
Right.
So it absolutely makes sense. It's something that we try to help them to see that this is going to lower your language risk and make it so that your teams can actually talk to each other. And if I may, one of the biggest things that we try to encourage them to do when it comes to AI, I think that adoption of AI is something that's exciting, it's sexy, it's new, it's something everyone wants to get into. And I don't think that's necessarily a mistake. But when you have this language barrier, you've got an issue with adoption. Even before you look at your current workforce, I think for when we look at the ages, when we look at the abilities, when we look at kind of what their foreknowledge is, you're already having an issue with adoption. But even if you get past that, if you don't have buy-in from the ones that they're supposed to be using this technology, that's an issue. Also, when it comes to AI, we're only thinking about it really with translation when it comes to the language barrier.
Mm-hmm.
It's a limited way of thinking because many times when you're looking at Spanish-speaking workers in their country, they may be what we call in our wheelhouse, we call it pre-literate, meaning not being able to read or write in your first language. That's common in construction as a whole, but especially with this subset demographic.
Right.
So even if you translate your entire safety procedures, you translate every toolbox talk, if it's written, it could be something that still doesn't connect.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say, hey, use this AI software and I've translated the whole thing, that may or may not get you the buy-in and the adoption that you're looking for.
Right.
So this should really be, language should be something that's a through line through all of it. Whether you're trying to implement AI, whether you're trying to implement a new mental health protocol and or initiative, whatever the case may be, if there's not a language component, whatever percentage of your company that is non-English speaking, that's your failure rate because they cannot access those initiatives and or programs that you're putting in place.
Right. And this comes up a lot, obviously, in any conversation with AI and technology. And, I always look at AI as an accelerant, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't fix
think it is.
anything. It just increases the speed at what you can do. So
Correct.
if you're already doing something bad or unsafe or incorrect, and you
Yes.
throw AI on top of that, you're just going to do bad faster. And that's probably
Absolutely.
not the best language, but that's as
It's not.
brash. That's as
Yeah.
brash as I can put it. And that's, you raise an interesting point too about, language and communication, because in my head, I'm thinking like, language, for me anyways, I think spoken word,
Yeah.
but, it could be written, it could be video, like it's any type of communication, I guess, right? Especially, with, and I don't know if this is your thing, but with, dyslexia, neurodivergence, autism, all that stuff, that affects the way people process information as well.
Absolutely.
And so I'm seeing a shift in more progressive companies to multimodal types of communication, right? So
Smart.
audio, video, text, because, you never know. Like you said, somebody, and what was the term, pre-literate, where they're not able to read or write in their
heart, we call it their heart language, but essentially their first language.
Yes.
If they're unable to read or write, it's pre-literate.
Okay. No, that's interesting. So another one of your lines that I liked and I came across was, most safety failures don't start with equipment, they start with assumptions. So when it comes to language, which assumptions hurts people most often, would you say? Like what surfaces on sites with these incorrect assumptions?
This, nodding,
Mhm.
or silence.
Okay.
So at the end of a toolbox talk, or we had, I can give you an example, a company that we were working with a year or two ago, they shared this with me, and this is just something I can't forget. They did an OSHA training, fall protection training. There were, I think, 2 or 3 Hispanic men in the audience that were receiving this training at this company. At the end of it, the trainer says, "Everybody good?" And he's doing the 2 out of the 3, nodding and doing the thumbs up. Everyone was like, "Yeah."
Just do what he's doing, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There were no questions. So there's a third. There was a thumbs up, a nod, and silence. So he's saying to himself, oh, good, we got it done. That's in the books. Check the box. Okay. A few moments after the training was done, one of their Hispanic workers tied a rope around his waist and climbed a height that could have killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at him in shock and saying, what is he doing up there? He didn't understand.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine, if you and I, if you want to shock me, you can tell me, you don't speak another language, or do you?
Greek. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm not picking Greek. So let's say, let's say Chinese.
Yeah.
If you were dropped in China and you had to find work, you had to find a place to live, you had to get your kids in school, you're already stressed to the max. So let's say you get a job. They're sharing some information with you that you know is important. You can feel it. You can see the tone. You can see their movements, and you're trying to put it all together. No one else around you seems to have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when they say, do you have a question? Are you going to be the one to go? Now, add to that maybe you do have a legit question, like a legitimate question, but you don't know enough Chinese even to form said question.
Yeah.
You're even less likely to raise your hand, and it could be a valid point because not having the language doesn't remove your experience. It doesn't remove your expertise. Your expertise carries with you, but when you can't put it in the language of the majority or in the setting that you're in, it is almost as if you don't have that language because you can't express it. You can't pun it in a way that can communicate what you know. So in those situations, when we have the thumbs up and the head nod, everybody good, and the silence, we assume everyone's on the same page when oftentimes that is not the case. And the way you find out is either through a near miss, an injury, or a fatality.
Right. And by that point, it's too late.
Absolutely. I mean, it's too late for that person. Absolutely.
And I remember seeing that there's a pyramid, right? For every fatality, there's so many near misses, and for every near misses, you know what I mean? It goes down like that. So if you catch more at the bottom, and what I think we're talking about, an element of it, like language aside for a sec, is psychological safety. People, just generally in the world, but especially in construction, they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to say they don't understand or they didn't know. Why? Because they've been treated, especially hourly workers, they've been treated as a disposable resource. So again, if I put myself in that person's shoes where I'm new, say I'm still in Canada, I start a new job site, my rent's coming due, my kids are in a bunch of activities, my wife's at home because she can't work because of the kids or whatever. And, I'm not going to stick my neck out because I don't want to risk being fired. And then you throw a language barrier on top of that. It's just fuel to the fire.
Exactly. You've described a perfect storm. And when it's that way, if you look at that and if you turn the paradigm just a little bit, if you are on deadline and you know how deadlines get squeezed and you're like, we got to hurry this up. You're looking at someone who may prioritize speed over safety because they're trying to hit the deadline, because hitting the deadline means I did a good job and I get to stay. I don't put my job in jeopardy. Right. So you're looking at these compounding factors that really put together a perfect storm.
So what does it look like when you have somebody, like say somebody works with you, and then after this, I want to talk more about what you're doing in your program and stuff, because I'm super interested, and I think people want to hear about that too. But let's say somebody works with you and they're finally able to communicate. Like, what changes about the way they show up with safety when they? First of all, like, I can just picture the look on workers' faces when you have somebody speaking their language. Like, aside than just the understanding what they're talking about, it just probably just warms their heart to hear their native language being spoken. So when somebody communicates like that, what does that look like, and how does that change dynamics on a job site?
And I'll give you an example of this too, but what it does, it changes the entire culture of the company, to be honest with you. And I've watched this happen, and it never gets old because you start to create what we call internally, we call it the air of tribe. So when you have Spanish-speaking workers trying to speak English, they're speaking it badly. If we're looking at perfection as the ruler or the guide, they're not speaking it perfectly. But then you have leadership, HR, middle management, C-suite. They're trying to speak Spanish. They're not doing it perfectly either. But it evens out the playing field because I'm trying. What's communicated is not so much the words; it's that I see you and I'm trying. Yes. Oh, I see you and I'm trying. Yeah. That kind of creates this safe space, or I don't know if safe space is the right word, but an environment where the two sides are coming together instead of being kind of siloed to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you and I are in China and we find someone who speaks English, I'm going to be close to that person as much as I can because they're the only one I can communicate with.
Right.
So that knowledge base, your experience gets siloed on either side, depending on what language it is. So you get this kind of collaborative movement that comes together that affects your culture, where ones are saying to themselves, I did see something wrong. Even if I don't have all the English, I've learned enough where I can say, a near miss just occurred and this is what happened.
Yeah.
Then on the other side, they're like, oh, I don't know it perfectly, but I know enough to get more information out of you so that we can fix this.
Mm-hmm.
That starts to shift the entire culture and you get more of a collaborative effort. Now, I don't know about you, but any team that's functioning like that is functioning much better optimally and safely going forward, which is saving green at the end.
Yeah. And this is where, well, in Canada, our money's different colors, but I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean. Fair.
I got to pull the Canada card on people.
Card. That's fair.
But no, I know what you mean. So I lost my train of thought there because I was too busy making. No, that was my fault. No, I'm really excited about this topic because like it's what I'm passionate about, and it's the human side of the industry. Because when you go out of your way, and like you said, even if it doesn't make any sense, the fact that you try to communicate with somebody and they hear it sends them a message that I care about you enough to be vulnerable and put myself out there, because you probably look stupid when you first try and talk it. But sticking your neck out lets them know, like, hey, you're welcome here. We value you. I care about you enough to do this for you. And you can't tell me, and this is where, I'm big on mental wellness, like, psychological safety. And this is along the same path. People look at it as a wellness initiative. Some people might hear this and say like, oh, Monique, this sounds really nice and you're making people feel good. It's like, no, fuck that. Sorry, pardon my French, but fuck that, because that from it's an operational perspective, because that person, they're going to work their ass off for you. Exactly. More so, they're not just going to do it out of scarcity or losing their job. They're going to say, this person actually cares about me now, and I need money to pay the bills. So I'm going to work hard and make sure I want to, keep my place here. And
exactly. And to add to that point, if you have someone who you've shown you care about them, then they're giving you their best. They're giving you 110%. You might see potential in them where we're now looking at that shortage. Because if you have a frontline worker that can't communicate, then how do you promote them to foreman? How do you promote them higher? You can't. They end up hitting a ceiling, which is unlocked by language. So when you see a worker that, wow, they really have potential, they're hardworking, excellent quality of work, once you give them that language piece, now you're looking at someone you can actually transfer that knowledge to. Because I think for every 10 that are leaving, only 3 are coming in. Well, now we're starting to address that within our own ranks. People who are already on the payroll, people who are already there. When you unlock that language barrier, you're able to actually do something with the ones who are already there, who maybe have skills you haven't tapped into yet.
So let me ask you a stupid question.
Never, but go on.
How, just a rough number, like just your client base, percentage-wise, how many companies in the US adopt a system like this? 10%, 5%, 2%, 1%, like just kind of wild number. And I have a follow-up question to it.
So when I say this is that there are companies that we've talked to who I would have said were 0%, but once they're made aware of all of the factors and how it affects their bottom line, they convert, if that makes sense. So I don't know if a conversion rate might be more, you know what I mean?
Well, I guess I would guess that not the majority of companies are doing
not the
stuff
majority,
like
because not everyone is looking at the true cost of it. There's still feelings about, I'll say this that might encapsulate the point, and I hope you don't forget your question. There was one GC I was talking to, a female GC, and she says to me, and I'm not quoting her exactly, so if she sees this, I'll make that disclaimer. But she said, essentially, if you come to the United States, you should speak English. That's just the way it should be. And a lot of people carry that opinion. It's not one that I'm trying to relieve people of. People are entitled to their opinion. In the next breath, though, she said, however, when people weren't showing up to my sites and my projects were getting behind, I care about that. So sometimes you have to frame it in such a way that they find their caring, that's focused.
Oh yeah,
Sometimes it's not focused on the person. Sometimes it's focused on the bottom line.
for
Either
sure.
way, it makes sense, but sometimes it takes some converting.
And I get that. In my day job, I'm director of operations at a company. I get it. It's about companies exist to make money. We're not just in it to make people feel good and and get the job done. No, they exist to make money. And profit isn't a
Absolutely.
dirty word. So you got to look at that from that operational and that business case lens. But so of those X percentage of, and I would guess it's a small percentage of overall companies have a program like this so far.
So
So
far,
far.
yeah.
But how many of these companies have Hispanic workers working for them?
Oh my gosh, that's a much higher
Almost all
number.
of them?
Yeah.
Almost all of them. So
Yeah.
here's my follow-up question. Why aren't more people doing this? What's the barrier to somebody adopting this type of program? Or like say you've talked to a company and they've said, Monique, I don't know this. We're not going to proceed with this. Like what is stopping somebody from from implementing this? You know what I'm
That's a
asking?
great question. Because most companies that we speak to, once they see the full picture, it's something that if they can't do it right away, they're figuring out a way to do it and they come to us later. What
Mm-hmm.
we don't want them to do, oh, I shouldn't say don't want them to do. What's not ideal is when they find us after the injury,
Mm-hmm.
after their EMR has gone up, after they have affected their ability to bid on projects in the future, after there's a fatality on their name. That's not the way we want them to find us.
Mm-hmm.
We've been in business for 3 years total. We're still a young company. It takes time to get that kind of broadcast that, hey, we exist.
Yeah.
One of the most common responses I get is, I didn't know this existed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this could be done. I didn't know this could be addressed. Because really, it's the elephant in the room. If anyone that you know, or if you yourself have tried to learn another language, it feels like an elephant in the room. Like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
Even the adult brain, most of us, the last time we took, learned a language, we were 13 with no bills. We lived at home with our parents, and our bandwidth was, you could, swim in it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in our 40s, me too.
Mm-hmm.
And we have mates and children and jobs and stresses. And I think sometimes there's an assumption that I can't do this.
Yeah.
And there's no way. How could I possibly pull this off?
Mm-hmm.
So that there's some mental barriers to thinking, how can this be done? And it feels like this gargantuan task.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm surprised at how many GCs have not even translated their handbook, their safety procedures. None of it's even translated.
Right. And that's low hanging fruit there, pretty low effort stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if you haven't adopted that and you didn't see yet how that's costing you, when you meet someone like me, like, someone with next to native, then you go, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that this is where the leaks were coming from, because these are things that bleed your bottom line.
Yeah.
And when you're thinking about even retraining, rehiring, if someone doesn't feel valued and they're like, they didn't see me anyway. With this population, you also see a lot of movement. Well, they'll be going from one company to another. If they're not held on to, that's you reposting that job, rehiring for that job, retraining. All of that costs money. So
Yeah.
when they finally see where the leak is, then they go, oh, I need to address this.
Yeah. No, and not to beat a dead horse here, but so I'm part of again, part of my day job. I'm part of a peer group, right? So it's a collective of executives from other companies, and we get together once a month and we hold hands and sing Kumbaya. No, we don't do that, but essentially we do. But part of it is you do a presentation on your company, and there's part of that's financials. And I remember there was a tech company there, and they put up their numbers, and he's like, yeah, we make a 48% margin. And my jaw dropped because I was looking around and I was like, is anybody else? Because in construction, we're single digits.
Right.
Right. And in an estimate, which a lot of jobs are bid spec, so that you put in a number and you live or die by that number.
Right.
There isn't a line item in the estimate for Spanish people figuring out how to read English or understand English. No, that's coming off for your profit. That's coming off of the like you said, it hits the bottom line. And I don't know why I keep driving this point home. Monique's not paying me to say this stuff, but it's just good business sense. So
Yeah.
So let's. I know we were going to talk about the product, but I want to ask you one more question before we get into that.
Sure.
Because we're on the topic here. If somebody was here listening to this and they were kind of sitting on the fence, being like, I don't know if I buy this stuff. Like, what's one thing that they would need to hear? Not what they would want to hear about, like, oh, it feels good and the money. Like, what's something they need to hear to really ground this?
That's a good question. I told you had some great questions. I think they need to see the numbers. I think that numbers do not lie, and you can argue with them. So when they see the cost of an injury, the cost of a fatality, when they see that multilingual teams have 3 times more injuries than monolingual teams, when they see, on the flip side of that, it actually makes me think, I wish they could see some of the companies we've worked with and the way their whole culture shifts and the knowledge that it unlocks because you're finally able to speak in both directions. Um, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know that I've answered it well, but that's what I think.
No,
Because I think sometimes it doesn't hit the heart immediately. Not everyone feels that human effect,
yeah,
honestly. If it's not, if it's so different from them, sometimes they can't find a link to it. Like they can't tether
yes,
themselves to that
yeah,
thought. But everybody, none of us are working just for fun. Even if we like what we do, we're working because we need to feed our families. So when you show where it's a real leak in the bottom line, sometimes that's the only thing that will kind of arrest their attention. So that's why
right,
I said numbers first,
yeah,
because it
no,
cannot be a bleeding heart sort of decision. It has to make sense.
yes, no, and I think you answered it perfectly there. So, and I went off script there, so I blindsided you there. But
No, no.
I know, and I talk about this in the stuff I do with the mental health and psychological safety. I think there's 3 components when somebody has to make a decision and spend some money on these things. It's their heart, their head, and their wallet.
Yes.
So I look from a mental wellness perspective. I don't think anybody, and same with language, I don't think anybody would disagree with you that it's better for workers to be communicated to in their native language. Like, I don't think, like, you'd be silly to argue with that. So
Right.
that's the logic
Makes sense.
part. Yeah.
Exactly.
Some people might be able to disagree with how it makes them feel because not everybody's an empath like me, feelings first. And then
Correct.
everybody would understand the wallet aspect. I think in
Correct.
any situation, you could probably get people to 2 out of those 3 pretty easily, but it's getting that kind of trifecta. And I think you touched on all 3 there. So that was a great
You
answer.
and I are thinking the same about this because
Yeah.
since I know a second language, it does hit my heart immediately. But I also recognize business. It doesn't hit everyone's heart. And so
Yeah.
it can't be a one-trick pony from a business aspect.
Yes.
You can't be coming at this from only one angle because not all of your potential clients or people who need to see you, who don't know they need you, but you need to make it clear you can't come one angle. So I agree with you. Mind, head, and heart. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Feel free to use that.
You might say that again. You may very
Okay.
well.
So I want to hear more about the program. I think there's a
Sure.
couple offerings you have. Maybe just take a couple minutes and explain, what it looks like working with you, what you implement, and then I might interject with a couple questions here and there, but I want to hear more about what you're doing.
Sure. It's Site Speak is the name. We really focus on two-way communication because you could do it one way. We have some clients that will say, yeah, we want them to be able to communicate better. So we'll say that's bottom up, line workers learning English focused on construction. Then some will say, well, no, we don't really care about them. I'm paraphrasing, but we don't really care about them learning English. We want to know Spanish because we need to be able to explain it during the, onboarding process, explain benefits and make sure they understand what the procedures are. We'll say, okay, we can flip the model and teach, C-suite middle management foremen Spanish focused on construction. But the way that it works best is going in both directions. That's how you get this not only two-way communication, but that's how you start building the trust between the two. Because oftentimes when it comes to this particular demographic, it's a matter of trust.
Right.
We had one case where there was a gentleman that was in our programs. He was a safety director. He'd worked with a Spanish-speaking crew for more than 4 months. He was in our programs for, I think, the 6th or 7th week mark. Been working with these guys for, again, 4 months. As he was starting to use what he was learning through the courses, he wasn't speaking it perfectly. I'm sure he was butchering the pronunciation and everything. But one of the guys he was working with finally came to him and said, I need PPE. And it was a specific piece of PPE that he had not had for several months. Just creating that sense of try, which leads to trust, made it so that communication took place that probably should have taken place or absolutely should have taken place months prior.
Yeah.
So we recommend it both ways. We also offer training for leadership because not everyone wants to learn another language. Not everyone is convinced that they can.
Yeah.
Not everyone is able to. So there are some specific things, we call it best practices, of leaders who are leading multilingual teams. There's certain things that we do that make that harder and certain things that we do that make that easier. So we train them on how do I handle this to make it as good as it can be, even before any language instruction takes place. We recommend the language instruction, but that's not always the case, or just not always possible at the time. Why wait for any type of improvement? If you can't get it all, sometimes you can get pieces.
Right.
One other thing that I think is really important that we also do, we focus on things like suicide prevention and mental health bilingually. So like next month is Suicide Prevention Month. We will do bilingual presentations on what's available, what happens, how do we open up that conversation? Because it's not just this difficulty saying, hey, I'm having a hard time. Like that's not easy. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah.
But when you throw a language barrier on top, we recently released a 988 video completely in Spanish. Because sometimes you'll see, you might see the board at work, on site, not call 988. You don't know that's for you. They don't know that they can dial 2 and get to someone who can speak to them completely in Spanish. So even things like that, making awareness for resources that are available, we do those kind of things bilingually. But yeah, what if I put it in a nutshell? Site speak is both directions coupled with leadership training to address this issue head on.
I'm just, so that's awesome. So that sounds like a lot, and it's probably not, but like when you break it down, what's the first step? Like what, if somebody just heard that and they're like, that sounds pretty complicated. Like what is the first step? Is it a phased implementation?
Yes.
Because there's the 2 programs. Do you do one then the other both at the same time, or does it depend on the situation, or like, what does that look like at the beginning?
Great point. We usually start with a 12-week pilot because a lot of times, again, we're talking about ROI. We're running businesses here. So you need to see the ROI. So we'll start with a 12-week pilot. That way they can kind of see how it works. They can pick we call them their all-stars, whether it's leadership or frontline workers who not only want to do it, they're motivated. And especially for the frontline workers, ones that you kind of see them on a leadership track. So when they start out that way, it's a pilot that they can actually see what's happening there. We start really with an assessment. We need a baseline. Where are you starting? You get a post-assessment after that so you can see where did they go. There was something else I was thinking of when you asked that question and it just left. I'm gonna blame my 40s for this.
That's okay. No, it happens. If it comes
does
back,
happen, but it's annoying.
if it comes back, you can just interrupt me.
Okay.
But I'm just looking at some stats here because I had some prepared, and it's pretty insane, and a lot of people probably don't know about this because it shocked me.
Yeah.
But so I'll just read a couple here. So fatalities among Hispanic construction workers rose over 100% from 2011 to 2022 to 408 in 2022. Non-Hispanic construction fatalities rose 16% over the same span. And that might have been because there was an influx of Hispanic workers, regardless of the numbers. Almost 10 times as many worker fatalities are Hispanics.
Correct.
How much of that do you think could be contributed to language because they didn't understand safety or they weren't properly, trained because of that barrier?
I would say 80%.
I can't say 80%. Yeah.
I would say 80%, and I'm going to tell you why. And this is something that shocked me. We were, I was speaking at a conference earlier this year. I want to say it was in Myrtle Beach. They had a presentation by OSHA. I think OSHA in South Carolina. Whatever the case may be, they were going over this entire trench collapse. They were kind of doing a play-by-play of how it happened and what all the failure points were. My question afterward was, what if the reason the competent person was not behaving in the way that he should have? What if egress was not there because there was a language barrier in the beginning? Maybe something was not clear or misunderstood. How is that logged, or how is that documented when it comes to citations for OSHA? The way it was explained to me is that the language barrier is not a citable violation, only downstream violations. So if you have a case, this particular trench collapse was not due to language barrier. That was my what if, or, suppose. So let's say that there were directions given, not understood. There was nods, there were thumbs ups, and Hispanic workers maybe not fully understanding, but kind of looking for cues and clues from their coworkers that were trying to put this trench together. They didn't handle it exactly the way that they should have. Maybe the competent person did not speak English. The workers did not speak Spanish. That's actually the origin point of the injury. Once OSHA is involved, even if there's a fatality, that point gets put in their internal reporting system called MLang. it is never put in the report and is never included in the violations for that company to fix. So that company could go through all of the repairs, fix all of those problems, downstream
Yeah.
issues, and never have fixed the origin point. So when you're talking about if those workers were in the numbers that you just mentioned, the origin point was actually communication. So I would say 80%.
And we're talking, this stat is specific to fatalities, but how many,
Yeah,
recordables, how many near misses
exactly.
are due to this, but not linked to it because it's an upstream thing. So this is
Exactly.
huge.
This
This
is
is a-
ginormous.
there was a study in 2017. 95.4% of construction executives and project managers said a language barrier exists on their projects.
Oh, yeah.
It's
No,
almost 100. It's almost 100%.
And
that,
so you can see how that does not track with 33 and a third. But
Yeah.
go on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one more here. So this was from 2024. Of 1,229 Hispanic Latino workers fatalities, 68.5% were foreign born. So over half, definitely, you could say that was due to, because, being born in another country, probably didn't speak the language. So I feel kind of stupid, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, Monique, because I didn't even really think about this stuff before. Like,
Really?
honestly,
Well, you're not in the minority there.
no. In Canada, I think we have it to a lesser extent. I know I've definitely come across job sites where certain subtrades, designated substances comes to mind, like abatement of lead and abatement of asbestos.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you see like a Caucasian Canadian-born person doing that job. And I've
Correct.
been on sites where I've seen people doing what they weren't supposed to, and I go and I try and explain, and they're giving me this, and I'm giving them shit. I'm saying, no, you can't do this, and they're
Don't
like,
do that. Yeah.
but because they don't know, and
Correct.
it's not their fault. They were just told to do a job, and that guy, that woman is just trying to put food on their table, and they're,
Correct.
and it when you break it down, it's just, we got to do something. So I'm really glad you're doing this work, and I'm glad to hear there's some level of success, and I think there's nowhere to go but up with this stuff, because the way that the industry, and I'm going to get on my soapbox now here for a minute, but
Please.
the way
Please.
the way the industry has operated, we haven't changed much in the
No,
last year.
I agree.
So from a safety perspective, health and safety, let's face it, Monique, health and safety exists to protect the liabilities of a company.
Correct.
The main thing, it protects the workers and all this, but there's a reason that health and safety exists within a company. It's to mitigate the risk and limit the liability that, like you said, you're going to have a lost time injury because it's going to cost money. It's going to impact your potential for future work. Your insurance premiums are going to go up, blah, 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 and all those other stuff. There's going to be a shift now, because the people who have operated that way and profited off of it, they're not going to change because they're at the end of their careers. Once they're gone, and the next wave, millennials, you and I and younger, come in and actually, I might sound bad, but care about people,
Prioritize. Change the game. Yeah.
and understand the importance,
Mhm.
not just logically or with their hearts, but understand the operational impact.
Exactly.
It would not be prudent to not pursue stuff like this. For the cost, I don't know what your program costs, and we don't have to get into numbers, but the return on investment, the impact that you're going to have on your bottom line versus the cost you're going to spend, to me, it's probably, more than 10 to 1. So
Absolutely.
let's, I'm off my soapbox now. Sorry.
Thank
I'm breathing heavy and my heart's beating.
No,
But,
I enjoyed it.
So let's get back to you, and you started this, and you doing this work. So knowing now that you didn't plan to get into construction, right? I think I read somewhere you cried after your first solo class, just probably because you were overcome with emotion, right?
No, I thought I was failing. I was like, what are you
You thought you
doing?
were failing. Okay. So what did that teach you, that experience, going through that, feeling like you're failing, and now, you've got your company and you're rocking and rolling? What's that feel like?
It's kind of, oh my goodness, what a great question. It's insane because I don't know about you, but entrepreneurship was never something I was reaching out for, ever. I'm the first one in my family to reach out for this, to be an entrepreneur. It's something that I looked at and thought, I'd be crazy to do that. I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a story for another time, but I was thrown into entrepreneurship to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the safety of being under someone else's umbrella. I love that I could work my hours. And by law, you have to pay me this number that we agreed to when you hired me. And I loved
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
because it gave me stability, or at least it gave me a predictability that I found safety in. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people are finding, especially with AI coming in, that they're having to retool and figure that thing out. And when I first started, I remember my sister told me, she said, when you try something new, fear will greet you first. Nod and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And being in this particular part of the industry, I consider myself more of a trade partner. I don't swing the hammer, I protect the hands that do.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to that, and because, like you, I never thought about this. Most people, that's people's reactions. That fear stays with me because I'm like, can I help them to see how important this is? It's not
Mm-hmm.
something I'm being convinced of. I already know it for a fact. But to be able to communicate that clearly so that someone else goes, wow, this is really important. It stays with you because you're trying to make this thing work in something you truly believe in. That's
Yeah.
not easy. But that
Yeah.
first night when I cried after I wiped my face, I was like, okay, now what? Are you going to quit?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I ain't doing that. That's not who I
Mm-hmm.
am.
Mm-hmm.
So wipe your face and plan for the next class. And I did. And I just kept
Yeah.
doing it. And I do it now. I do it
Mm-hmm.
now. Every time I'm about to speak, every time I'm about to be in front of a GC, every time I'm on a podcast, I get a little nervous because I want to explain it right. I want it to be clear. I want it to be something that whoever is listening to this walks away with, wow, I need to address this. This is somebody's life.
Yeah.
So I feel even now that it's heavy work.
Mm-hmm.
It's heavy work, but it matters. So am I going to quit? No.
So so I can understand where you're coming from 100% because even the work I'm doing, you know, you're putting yourself out there as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. I'm on social media, and naturally the stuff I talk about, I get a lot of stupid comments online.
Okay. Okay.
When I talk about construction and feelings and love in the same
Yeah.
sense.
They're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
But it
yeah.
matters. Yeah.
And when I first started, I get those comments, and it would bother me. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie,
Of
and I
course.
would
You're
fight it.
human.
I'd fight it, and I'd be like, I'd give them the stats and this and that. Now my response, if somebody gets aggressive, I'm just like, "Are you okay? Do you need a hug?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of just being a little bit facetious.
Yeah.
But and where I'm going with this is, you're not going to convert everybody. Not everybody's going to buy into this. And if and where my mind is at with my stuff is, I have to stop trying to convince everybody and care about what everybody thinks. And once I realized that, and I'm a recovering people pleaser, it's maybe it's something that happened in my childhood, but like
Okay.
I hit this point where I'm like, I don't really care anymore about what other people think. Obviously, my
Yeah.
wife and my kids, I want to be a good person.
Right.
I'm not go around being a jerk. But
Yeah.
if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, too bad for you. And
Yeah.
I've found my people. I connected with you. I connected with all these other amazing people, Josh Vitale, John Luca, all these
Yeah.
amazing people
Yeah.
think the same way. And we're building a community, and we're working together.
Exactly.
And that's how we do this. So we don't have to boil the ocean.
No.
So on that, looking back to the Monique that showed up at that first
Yeah.
class, what's the major difference, or top two or three, maybe top difference now between how you show up now with the client and do your thing?
I feel more confident now, and not in a negative way. I think to myself, if you don't get it today, I want to leave the door open because after you have that fatality, you'll be looking for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't want us to come to a kumbaya state that way, but I'm here for you when that happens. Hopefully it won't happen. I should say if that were to occur, I want to always leave the door open. It's not a matter of putting the pressure that it has to convert today, that it has to make sense today. I'm hoping that if I can plant a seed, as you're looking, sometimes just planting that seed, even if in front of you they don't say, "Oh, that makes sense." Then it changes the way they look at their workforce.
Yeah,
It
they're
changes
going to
the
be
way they start seeing things.
they're going to be more apt to pick up on these, what before was a nuance, now will probably become a
Correct.
glaring thing that they're going to pick up on. So
And then sometimes they end up coming back, or we'll engage in different ways. We'll cross paths again. So I don't take it so personally. I know how important this is. I'm not worried about the effectiveness of it and what it truly is. So it allows me to relax a little more. I think I was wound so tight and I was just,
Yeah,
I don't know, the lack of experience, not, I don't know. Sometimes you don't know the value of what you have and what you're doing.
for
And
sure.
until you're convinced of it, you treat it like it's like you're hawking papers or something. Like you're treating it like it doesn't have the value that it does. Once
Yeah.
you realize it does, you present differently. You enter a room differently.
Mhm.
If you get it, like you kind of like what you said, if you get it, great. But if you don't, it doesn't change the value.
Yeah.
Something about a diamond is still a diamond, even if I think it's just a shiny rock. I
Right.
Because you don't see that doesn't mean it's not. So
And and the tough part too is it's tough to sell prevention because when you're selling an object or a program that has an outcome,
yeah.
like take construction for example, an
Mhm.
owner hires somebody, hires a team, and they build, and at the end of the day, they have a building. The work you're doing, guaranteed, it has saved a life or a recordable injury or a near miss.
Absolutely.
But it's not something. Oh yeah, see that injury? I avoided it. You're not going to see that because it
Correct.
didn't happen because of the work you're
Exactly.
doing. Yeah. So it's, super impactful. You've described, in your business, it's been a hard shift of thinking like a CEO instead of an employee. You kind of touched on
Absolutely.
it before about the stability. Now you're an entrepreneur. You're running a business. So what does that look like day to day? Like I know you have a family and you're trying to
Yeah.
balance all this stuff. Like how do you make it all work? What does that look like?
Well, it's funny. Someone asked me recently, how do you balance? And I said, balance. Like, I think she said the term work life balance, which I think has been thrown around way too much as if it's this thing that we can all attain. I think that is a moving target.
Hmm.
My children are at such an age where they need my attention. I need to be paying attention, I should say. Different from the baby stage. The baby stage, you're paying attention in a different way. It's like you're trying to keep them alive. My
Hmm.
children are at an age where they're thinking, they have questions, they need to be reasoned with, and we're, working through their real thoughts and feelings. That has a different kind of cognitive load. So
Hmm.
I have to really, I do a lot of volunteer work. I'll be married 20 years in November. I
Awesome.
call them tiny people, but they're really not tiny anymore. My son has passed me in height and he thinks it means something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think that, there are times where my husband and my children go to bed and my husband and I are sitting in our bed, both with our laptops working. He does drafting. So he
Mm,
designs homes and protect the crews that are working on them. So it's like,
mhm.
there are times where we just have to figure it out. I try to get enough sleep, I try to take care of myself, but I think I'm in that stage of life where my parents are getting older. My
Mhm.
children need me a lot. I'm running a business, trying to keep my marriage healthy. It's a lot going on. So keeping a work-life balance, I think I don't know that that's a thing that I believe can be achieved, at least not in this moment.
I agree with you. There's no such thing as work-life balance. Work is
Mhm.
part of life. Life is part of work. The good thing
Correct.
is when you find something like this and it's fulfilling for you, mentally, emotionally, physically,
Yeah.
spiritually, which is the vibe I get, and it's how I feel about the work I'm doing. It takes time, but it doesn't take effort. I find like because we're the same. My wife is an entrepreneur as well. She runs a doula agency to help
Oh, nice. Yeah.
support women through pregnancy and postpartum. And, so she gets it too, but some days, same thing. Kids go to bed, we're on our laptops.
Yep.
And we always call it silently existing together because we're
Yes.
spending time together, we're doing
Yeah,
stuff we love,
beside each
and
other.
we're with each other. But it's an amazing experience, but
Yeah.
then we'll look up and it's 12:30 or 1 in the morning, we're like, "What the hell are we doing?" Like, "We gotta get
Yeah.
up."
We're
So
not 20
I
anymore. We got to go to
I
bed.
yeah, 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 I totally get it, and, I can appreciate that. So so you've been at it 3 years now next to native. Like, where do you picture this going in the future? Like, say 5 years out, where do you picture this going, with the construction industry?
Well, it's interesting that you'd ask that because that's something I've really been thinking about. Because as it's growing and it's getting more attention, one of the questions I ask now is what other languages are popping up on your site?
Mhm,
Because right now, I put the company or base the company on the two languages that I speak fluently, English and Spanish. But we're seeing other languages pop up now. Are they getting as much demographic share as Spanish? No, I think that's going
mhm.
to take some time. But there are other languages that are coming up, and really the same principles apply.
Right.
So my goal long term, and in the not so far future, is to make sure we're addressing some of those other languages and giving them the same treatment that we're doing with English, Spanish now. Because we think of bilingual teams, well, we're starting to see multilingual teams, and it
Mhm.
shouldn't be that English and Spanish become what English is now to Spanish, if that makes sense.
Right.
If there's other languages represented, then that needs to be something that continues to evolve.
That's really interesting. And yeah, like the infrastructure is there, right? With the program and the systems.
Exactly.
It's just getting the right, and you're probably not going to learn the language yourself. There's people you can bring in to help you with
Yeah,
facilitating that. So that's a
absolutely. Because
smart
the
way to.
goal, when our language trainers now, they have to know the target language and the heart language. They have to know both. Because
Mhm.
even it was interesting, even as I was coming up and getting my training to teach English, I remember a lot of my colleagues only spoke English.
Okay.
Like they didn't speak anything else. And I found that to be curious because if I'm working with someone whose heart language is Chinese and I don't speak any Chinese, I'm making it difficult for them to ask me things they really need. So
Mhm.
oftentimes, even through our courses, yes, we're teaching a language, but we also speak both. So sometimes different needs will start popping up. Because once
Mhm.
someone knows that you speak their heart language, yes, they're learning English, but they might say, I don't know how to get my kids enrolled in school. Like a
Right.
real need that's been sitting under the skin that they've not been able to address. I have a medical issue. I'm not even sure how do you guys do doctors over here? How do you do appointments?
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
do it very differently here in the US than they do in some other countries. So being able to address those needs and connect them, we're not counselors. We're not, we don't have those specialties, but we can connect them with ones that do.
Yeah.
When we branch out to other languages, we want to have that same ability because
Mhm.
those are human issues coming up. So if
Right.
I'm going into work and maybe my back has been bothering me, I think I had an injury or I've hurt myself and I'm not saying anything, I'm coming in preloaded. And that's really, that's huge. When we talk about mental health
Yeah.
and the risk factors, when there's a language barrier, you're dealing with other risk factors. So regardless of what those languages are, at some point we would have a language trainer that speaks English and it would be English and for all of it.
Okay. No, that's amazing, and it sounds like it's. I think with immigration and just the population growth and all this stuff going on with the demand on construction, we're going to need more
Absolutely.
people, and not all those people are going to speak English. So the need is definitely there, and it's analogous to the stuff I'm doing, right? Like whether it's mental health, psychological safety, physical safety, it's all about getting people to do the best job they can,
Yeah.
for the company, but also for themselves, so they can go home happy and safe to their families at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they're what the
and like
company is made of. It's made of
exactly,
people. So
exactly, 100%. So how can we learn more about what you're doing? I have some information I'll put in the show notes, but
please
maybe let
do.
us know how people can reach out and where they can get a hold of you.
The first thing I would say, I hang out on LinkedIn. That's kind of my home. I don't really hang out on other social media channels because the people who are doing this work and who are leading this work are on LinkedIn. So that's where I hang out. That's where you got all my information, our website, our everything. You can see kind of what we're doing, what we focus on. And that's the best way to get a feel for what we do and how it works. But I am old school. I am never against the phone call. So
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
a virtual coffee, a real coffee, whatever the case may be. But to actually have a conversation about how this affects their sites and specifically how this will help them to mitigate the risk that they're already kind of trying to mitigate, but this helps them to actually make it
Mhm.
effective.
Amazing. No, thanks for coming on. I really
No problem.
appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you and what you do, and I wish you nothing but success. And I think this is definitely something everybody could benefit from, even if it's just a conversation, like reaching
Yeah,
out and seeing what it's all about, and because that's where it starts with awareness. But awareness will only get you so far,
exactly.
and you could probably do it yourself, but it'll take you 20 times longer than
Yeah,
using a service like yours. So
absolutely.
um, so don't, if you're thinking about it, don't hesitate to reach out. But yeah, thanks. I really appreciate your time, Monique. Thanks for coming on.
I enjoyed it so much, immensely, actually. Thank you.
If you're a leader in the construction industry and want to discuss how you are addressing workforce challenges in your organizations, or if you have a construction experience that you want to share with the world, we want to hear from you. Reach out to me at angelo@hsoc.one. That's ANGELO at hsoc.one to see how we can work together.